Listen, someone we haven't heard much of recently has just broken his silence. He's over in Thailand talking at a WBC event. The person I'm talking about is Oleksandr Usyk. Let's have a listen to what Oleksandr says before we comment on it.
I won't fight with Deontay Wilder. For me, I think it's interesting.
Why Deontay Wilder? Because people are saying maybe he's not as good as he was.
This is world champion guy, this is very famous guy, this is strong guy, but it's Odin is one of is great heavyweight last 10 years. Mama too, but I say mama, I love you, but it's my work, not just work, it's love work, because I feel when I say myself, Alex. Enough. Okay. I feel, hey, Alex, you win all belts. Okay, for what? I wanna work because I love this.
Let's move past the interviewing style of the sort of Joey Barton, Steve McLaren genre of talking to people, and look at what Oleksandr Usyk said. I don't think anybody saw that coming as a potential opponent.
No, but totally understand it, if I'm honest. Because I think that Oleksandr Usyk has achieved everything you can achieve in boxing. You know, two-time undisputed world heavyweight champion,
yep.
Undisputed cruiserweight champion. And he's thinking now in years to come when people look back on this modern era and he has to box Deontay Wilder, who you know, has played a massive part in this era of boxing.
Yep.
And victory over Deontay Wilder would have cleaned up this era. So I totally understand it. And at the stage that he's at right now, Oleksandr Usyk, 38 years of age, and he could sail off into the sunset and go down as one of the greatest to ever do it. But I think adding Deontay Wilder's name to that list, you know, when people look back on it, in, let's say 20 years' time, and you're talking about, you know, great heavyweight champions, that, you know, that's what it'll be remembered for. Not that Deontay Wilder is a shot false, which he is, by the way, but they won't remember.
Do you think
that
he's being serious,
to come.
Paul? I mean, ultimately, we now look at Deontay Wilder through the prism of a rearview mirror in terms of once upon a time he was the most feared in terms of punch power, not in terms of technical ability, but in terms of punch power. Do you think he's being serious in what he says there?
I think that the key thing to take from that interview is, and what you've got to detract from that, is that he's saying, I love it, and that's his attitude. My brother Callum always mentions Usyk and how he is and his temperament and his attitude, and he did a video or a post recently saying, it's not motivation, it's discipline. And that's him. Now, I think he's looking at that thinking, for whatever I've got left, I'm going to make sure to make the most of it and squeeze out it rather than probably sitting on the sidelines.
Economically, you mean?
He's got that bit of hindsight, what I wish a lot of us had when we were all fighting, because you're a long time retired, and I tell young fighters that all the time. Economically as well, Sam, exactly. What's the easiest way you can make a good few quid out of it by going beating, with all due respect, a shot and shell of himself version of Deontay Wilder. Now, no one really remembers. They do with Berbick, let's say, against Ali, but leaving Leon Spinks at the end. Ali was past his best, but Leon Spinks, we all speak about Leon Spinks, that he beat Muhammad Ali, and that's all this will be. He cleaned up, he beat Tyson, he beat Joshua, he beat Fury, and he beat Wilder.
Are you surprised, Adam, that it's taken him this amount of time to start talking publicly about the next raft of opportunities or fights that he may or may not want to have?
No, not really. I think he's earned the right to take his time. He's a bit of a unicorn, is Oleksandr Usyk in the heavyweight division, and that's kind of how I'm treating him now. He's given me everything that I wanted from him. He gave me 2 against Joshua, he gave me 2 against Fury, he gave me 2 against Dubois, and he delivered. And now I think he's earned the right to maybe take a little bit of time and make decisions for him, as Paul's just alluded to there. There's a slight bit of disappointment, if I'm honest, with the length of time that he took, because obviously that kind of affected the fight between Joseph Parker and Fabio Wardley. And I think every fighter deserves the right to hear Anu in the ring rather than via email or text or however that came for Fabio. I also, in that interview, which parts of it wasn't played there, I watched it all yesterday, and he was talking about the Wardley, whether he would fight Wardley or not, or whether he would actually favour a Parker fight, is what he was referring to.
We'll get into that. Let's leave that in part for a second, because I want to evaluate that in isolation, because I've got my own views on that as well. But are you surprised? Because one of the things that really strikes me about Usyk is the integrity and nobility of the way he operates. He fights the best fights. He gives credit to those that merit credits. And I don't just mean after the fight where he talks to fighters about the next step with Daniel Dubois, but the way he attributed so much of his success to Anthony Joshua and the fight that Anthony Joshua gave to him, which catapulted him from a potential cruiserweight champion becoming a heavyweight to a bankable star, not to the level of AJ and Tyson Fury, but notwithstanding that. Are you surprised that this Wilder assertion is not in keeping with what Oleksandr Usyk represents? He gives fighters the best fights, he takes the best fights, he gets paid well for them because he's worth it, but this feels like I'm collecting a name for a distant time and maybe a check rather than collecting a legacy by beating all that's best around me and then leaving before maybe Moses Atoma arrives in serious nick.
I think it is off kilter from what we've experienced with Oleksandr Usyk in the past. But I think he's kind of earned that right a little bit in order to now, as Paul's just said there, to take fights that not necessarily suit him. I'm treating him like a unicorn, that he's kind of out of the picture now. I know that he holds 3 of those championship belts still, but there's a lot of top quality competition underneath him. You've just mentioned, obviously, one of those names. You've still got Daniel Dubois, you've got Fabio Woodley as a belt holder, you've got Jalalov who's knocking about, you've got Torres Jr. over. I think them all in a pot fighting each other kind of makes a lot of sense for the heavyweight division, whereas Usyk's kind of completed the game a little bit. He's the final boss. Yeah. He's over there. And if they come out and one of those is absolutely categorically the next best guy, I fully anticipate Oleksandr Usyk to give an opportunity to that next generation.
Well, like Cabiel.
Well, sorry, I did mention Cabiel's name there, but yeah, Cabiel's in that conversation as well.
He's sort of done that though with Daniel Dubois, didn't he? Because Daniel Dubois is that next generation, you know, and he gave him the opportunity when a lot of people were saying, you know, this is the young kid and he's coming with momentum now and this might be too much for Oleksandr Usyk. Those questions were there.
Like we're all saying, it doesn't go on forever. Keep on going back to the well, giving the next guy the opportunity. At some point, he's going to move on into a different direction. Usyk was on the stage talking about the 3 belts rather than the 4 and how this was temporary, which I didn't quite understand. But let's have a little listen to him talking about the decision to vacate the WBO.
Because I win this belt, yeah? If we, when I say, hey, listen, you must protect WC belt, I say, I can do it, but not now, because, listen, I have very hard 1.5 years with Tyson Fury, 2 fights, and prepare for fight and Daniel Dubois win. I say, я не проти. I don't mind, but I do it, but not now. Listen, this is like a sport and business. If win Parker, for me, it's interesting. Win Wardley. For me, not interesting. I say it's true. Okay, give you belt, boxing. Maybe later we fight together, like a big fight. It's only my mind.
Spence, there's 2 aspects of that. I mean, it's interesting that he talks about the fact that Parker would have been of interest to him. It makes me wonder why he didn't announce that he would fight Parker in maybe the new year, and then Parker wouldn't have taken the Wardley fight, and everyone might have been able to hold off, and the fight might have been able to be made for the WBO belt. And I don't know whether that chronologically could have worked. So that's the first part that I've sort of put out there as a placeholder. The second part is his lack of interest in fighting Fabio Wardley. What do you take from that?
I think at this stage of the game, look, I think that Joseph Parker had that resume, didn't he, with the likes of Deontay Wilder on there. So it was a more recognisable name and a fight that he felt that he could win, and he probably would have won when you look at it. So you go, that's a good fight for him.
He could have thrown Joseph Parker a bone by saying, I'll fight you for the WBO belt. The fight can't be made until the new year. Then Parker wouldn't have taken the Wardley fight, and he'd be fighting Parker for the fight that he thought he wanted to fight anyway.
Understood, but then he probably just wanted to let it play out for him, stop him. Otherwise, he stops earning money, doesn't he? And it's a fight that probably even Oleksandr Usyk felt that Joseph Parker would beat Fabio Wardley. Joseph Parker was a big favourite going into that one.
He was.
And I think that with Fabio Wardley, you look at the fight now, and from Oleksandr Usyk's side, he's looking at it going, this guy is potentially a dangerous guy.
I mean, I know there's a legacy damaging position here because people
He'll
still
want him
think
to
Fabio Wardley is not at the level that Usyk's at. So if he went in there and beat Usyk, but Usyk boys would back himself to beat Fabio Wardley, wouldn't he?
I'm not saying that he wouldn't back himself. What I'm saying is that he'd want him to get more. He'd want to establish himself a little bit more, like get himself a bit more recognition.
Who,
I'm saying
Fabio?
Fabio, yeah, like from Oleksandr Usyk's side, he'd say, well, look, he's not really bringing anything to the table. What could potentially be a dangerous fight?
I think Usyk's looking at that thinking like,
too easy.
It's beneath me. And
Yeah.
with all due
Exactly.
respect,
That's
he's two-time
exactly what I'm
undisputed
saying.
heavyweight champion of the
Yeah.
world against the fellow that started Mike Collar. Now, I'm not criticising or slagging Fabio at all. He's done unbelievable to get where he's get, but Joseph Parker's a name. Joseph Parker's been a heavyweight
Exactly
champion of the
what
world.
I'm
I'll
saying,
fight him,
Paul.
no problem,
Yeah.
but I'll give that belt up for that because he hasn't earned the right to fight against the two-time undisputed champion of the world. That's probably how Usyk's looking at it. I think the fact that he went back and beat Dubois was just, again, I'm not slagging Dubois off to Usyk. It's an easy fight to just get a few
But he was
points
also
in
a belt holder
and
as
win
well.
me belt back what I had and become a two-time
And there was a
undisputed
negative
heavyweight champion
narrative
in the
from the
world.
first fight, wasn't there, with the logo
course.
and all this stuff. He just went back to
It's just
take
easy
care of
to
business.
clear all that up and beat him easy because with all due respect, I'm levels above Dubois. That's probably what Usyk's thinking. And now
that's a tragedy.
he's earned the rest, I think, and he's going to make a choice to come back.
It's a tragedy for Fabio Wardley because Fabio has to battle against perception all the time. He's diminished virtually in every single fight that he goes into. And Fabio Wardley now, with due respect, in the same way that Daniel Dubois should have been given, the fight he had with Hrgovic should have been for the belt rather than being awarding it. And he didn't go into the fight with Anthony Joshua as any kind of A side. He had to walk into the ring as the defending champion first.
Yeah.
So he got diminished there. Wardley wins what ultimately should have been the fight for the belt, which because Usyk didn't help them by vacating the belt before the fight, so they could have fought for that belt.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of irony
The,
attached there.
WBO could have grown a set, though, because
agreed.
they ordered the fight with Parker and they gave him a period of time of leeway, didn't they? And Usyk said that he'd had a bad back or whatever it may be, and then they pushed that down for another 30 days, and then there was another reordering, and then they gave him a little bit more of a leeway. They could have grown a set and said, listen, right, are you doing it or you're not doing it? Give us the belt back. Let's make this for a proper title fight where Joseph Parker defends the championship against Fabio Wardley, and therefore somebody in that fight would have been.
And I know you love the subject though on the sanction bodies, but the WBO have been a bit unpredictable recently. They call them pace bids for Callum Smith's interim world title. Like, when have you ever heard of pace bids for a mandatory challenger for the interim title? Especially when the world champion is still very much active.
Are you surprised, Paul, that Usyk, because I felt there was a possibility, for what my opinion's worth, that he might sail off into the sunset after beating Daniel Dubois, beating him so convincingly in a rather unique Usyk performance because he was so aggressive in that fight and so assertive from the outset, that might have been his swan song. Done Joshua, done Dubois, done Fury, done deal. Are you surprised he hasn't sailed off into the sunset, Paul?
Yeah and no. Yeah, I am, because as he just said there, I still love the game. He's still loving it. So I get that, and I get why he wants to squeeze that out of his potential-wise. But again, you can relate to this a lot more than I can. It doesn't matter how much money you've got like he's got. If you can make a quick 50 million quid, 40 million quid, you're going to take it, because that's... no,
I'm just laughing at a quick 50 million quid.
But that's literally what it is. To get in there and beat Deontay Wilder or Dubois, which he's done twice, Fury, which he did twice, and AJ, to him, he had plenty more in the tank there. He's proven that he's the best. So a fight, with all due respect, against Deontay Wilder in the state that he's in, is going to be the easiest night he's probably had in a long time.
That's my point when you're talking
Easy
about
money.
modern eras. You go, there's a big name missing off that era when we fast forward 20 years and you look at it and you go, Deontay Wilder's not on that resume. You know, he's just ticking a box for virtually no risk at all. So it's like, from a business point of view and a commercial point of view, really, Deontay Wilder versus Fabio Wardley. Fabio Wardley's a live one and he's a dangerous fight. Deontay Wilder is a no-risk fight with
Simon
probably
made
an
a good
easier
point
selling.
before as well, though, on it. Like, it's not in his
DNA.
nature to do what he's doing. But as you've just said, it just ticks a lot of boxes, and people might not remember in 20 years' time that Wilder was shot and at the end and finished. So I think that listen, he could do it, and I'd probably forgive him apart from fail a drug test, like, because he's Usyk and he's great and he's a role model, a perfect role model for everyone. He's proven everyone, he's beat everyone.
He has.
But I can allow him this because of what he's done. In my opinion, I've got no problem with it.
Stage of the career that he's at, you're probably looking at another 12 months. I know that he says he's going to go on and he's going to fight into his 40s and whatnot. He's 38 now, and he might be going, look, I beat Deontay Wilder, another tick, and then I sit there and see what it is. Do I really want to risk everything against someone like Moses Atama? Probably not. Fabio Wardley's going to keep improving as well. His name's going to fall into that bracket.
What do we think in our mind's eye would be the ideal foot? I mean, we all admire Usyk incredibly. I mean, I've picked against Usyk in every fight. It doesn't mean I don't admire him. Maybe because my heart's gone above my head at times because I wanted Daniel to win, I wanted Anthony to win, and I wanted Tyson to win, despite some of Tyson's boorish behaviour at the time. But the fact of the matter is we have a 12 months in front of us. What would we like to see that 12 months look like with Oleksandr Usyk fighting whom and when? Okay, if Deontay Wilder takes care of itself and we get that fight, which I'm not particularly wedded to, but let's just say it happens. Who would we like to see, Adam? Who could we imagine seeing that Usyk fighting in terms of, you're quite good at wish lists and putting things together in terms of what you think they should be. Who would you like to see on that?
Well, I mentioned a little earlier the names of the runners and riders that are underneath him. Let's have a few of those guys fight each other over the next 6 to 7, 8 months. Somebody's going to rise out of that pack,
yeah.
Who then people are going, maybe he can, maybe that's the guy. Maybe it is Fabio Woodley. Maybe it is Moses Atauma. Maybe Daniel Dubois comes again and looks and smashes a lot of them. Maybe it's one of the American guys like Richard Torres Jr. Who knows who it's going to be? Maybe it's Caballel.
Yeah.
Jake Paul.
We'll get to him.
Maybe. But I would love, listen, I've no problem, like Paul just said. Let Oleksandr Usyk have his fun fight with Deontay Wilder, make a few quid and have that legacy tick off. His final fight, if you can do it in the Ukraine, that would be absolutely sensational for him. And against a legitimate, who is the best of the rest
who comes out of the pack?
Caballel for me, right
Listen, and I think so too. The interesting thing is there is a school of thought. We just talked there, Paul just mentioned the idea that you can go make a quick 40, 50 million quid. Where's that 40 or 50 million quid going to come from? Because there's a debate being had now that the Saudis are no longer at the front of driving the price point to a level that's almost unsustainable. Well, it's unsustainable. It's unsustainable because it doesn't make economic sense. It makes economic sense to them because it's for their blueprint and their modelling and so on and so forth, and it's about vanity play and a creation of awareness. I mean, do we think, Adam, that the Saudis are losing their luster economically? I think that some of the promoters think there's a correction now. It's coming now.
Yeah.
And that's potentially dangerous for the sport because if people's expectations have been raised and it's no longer there anymore, you're going to stop seeing fights again. Do you think there's a jeopardy that the Saudis are no longer going to dance this dance and put that kind of dough on the table to create these kind of outcomes?
I think there has to be some type of realignment because it is unsustainable, as you've just pointed out, and people's expectations of the type of purses that they can demand has gone absolutely through the roof. At some point, it's got to start returning. And it's going to be interesting this next 12 to 18 months period. I mean, the noise from Turki Al-Sheikh is that he's in. This is what we're doing. We're going in this direction. And you've got to take him at face value.
There's a report in the New York Times, wasn't there? An article written about the danger that it has to boxing, this inflated price point, and subsequently the loss of appetite from the Saudis. I'm not sure I agree with it. I think that ultimately boxing goes through peaks and troughs. And they compared it to the HBO generation where everything was elevated and all of a sudden HBO disappeared off the scene and boxing was left a little bit desolate.
Can I, in my opinion of it, I managed a Saudi fighter. I've been over there. I was one of the first to go over there when Callum boxed against George Groves in 2019, 2018. That was before tourism was open. We all needed visas to get in there, proper pages in your passport. And it was sort of the old regime, as they called it, where it wasn't getting as modernised or as westernised as it is now. And it's a great place when you go there. We've all been there on this side of the table, and it's a nice place, and it's evolved massively, and tourism in the country is important. Now, if they've got a budget of £1 billion there, and they need to put that in advertising to promote Saudi as a country for visitors and tourists to come, why not spend a lot of that on boxing and put great fights on? Bring them in that way. But then once they're in, you don't need to spend as much on it because they're in. The tourists are in. I saw the stats recently. There's millions visiting Saudi.
And they want to build a free port.
And that's what it was for in the end.
Of course it was.
It was, for me, it was never going to last anyway at that level. Not that it could, but it was never.
The challenge is what the legacy of it is, because everybody knows
it's what that does to boxing now, isn't it?
It's a legacy it leaves behind, because ultimately it creates a false economy in the space, and all of a sudden boxers and fighters and circumstances begin to look at things differently. It was always about building Neon City. It was always about Agadir. It was always about ultimately looking at a free port and becoming an industrial powerhouse in the Middle East. We all know what it was about, and we all know that boxing was probably the easiest sport to do it in, because you couldn't do it in golf because it was too much governance. You can't do it in football because it's a global sport and too big, but you can do it in boxing because it's the Wild West.
And it's easier to stage fights anywhere, whereas a team has the home grounds, as everything else, like, it's easier to stage a fight somewhere else. But now that's done, even if there's not another penny thrown in now and they wipe their hands with it, if we look back on boxing in 10, 15 years' time, what a period that was. Them fights were being made, and it was down to that money, why them fights were being made.
Absolutely.
Turkey denies those reports, by the way. He says that it is sustainable and they are going to continue paying that money. So We'd have to see how
their version of sustainable is very different to most people's version of it because their model is very different. But will be fascinating to see.